Okay, our next presentation we'll get a forest market update from Eric Kingsley. Eric is no stranger to this conference. Eric is the Vice President and Partner of Innovative Natural Resource Systems. Eric is also the Regional Staff Representative and Manager for the Forest Resources Association here in the Northeast. So again, Eric's no stranger, so Eric, you go.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Ray. Appreciate you having me. I am going to set my my timer here. I was told I have 30 minutes. Importantly, if a slide's up and you have questions, just yell it out. That's probably the best time to deal with it instead of playing Go Fish at the end. I will say this. All right, that one wasn't flagged. The bad one's flagged. I'm very optimistic about our industry long term. I have no short-term good news for you. If you have a flask in your truck and you want to get it, if Richard opens the bar, I will take no offense. It is about to be depressing. So, some sort of high-picture macroeconomic observations. Tariffs, and more importantly than tariffs, uncertainty regarding tariffs, causing a lot of market shifts, a lot of chaos. I'm not clear on what the end game is. Maybe if I don't move around, this won't happen. Okay. And there's no reason to think that we're moving toward stability. So there's increased economic uncertainty. We've got high and rising interest rates, at least in terms of consumer interest rates. Mortgage rates just jumped up last month. Of course, COVID fundamentally shifted work stuff. We're having an increased likelihood of recession and a shortage of workers. So that's all good news. I was telling Ray, and I'm sorry if this offends anyone, I subscribe to this economic publication that gives me all these weekly indicators. And some of them, are the traditional ones, housing starts and used car sales and this and that. One I have long paid attention to for 20 years is gross receipts at strip clubs around the country. And you're going to be like, why? That is the definition of discretionary spending. It is. No one, people need to buy used cars. No one needs to go to the glass slipper. Year over year, receipts at strip clubs around the country are down 25%. That's, I make no moral judgment there. I know we're about to hit the holiest day on the Christian calendar, so I make no moral judgment. It's just an economic observation. Not a good one. Okay, tariffs. And yeah, this is not a good slide, so I'm going to just quickly hit it for you. Diesel, going to increase because this region, we get all of our diesel from somewhere else, not here. I'm happy to send you all this stuff if you want. Maine has some mills. We can name 3 of them easily, big wood users that are proximate to a border and probably get a bunch of their fiber from across the border. You can say, like, oh, they can buy American fiber, and they may if their wood supply is tariffed, but that increases their costs. And of course, these are all commodities. They're competing. This isn't good news for those mills. Steel, of course, is used in everything. I think John didn't quite say this, so I'm going to put words in his mouth, and he can come beat me up later, or now. We have a little form here if he wants. But, the Mississippi Project was ordered and underway and moving, and they've already ordered, there's two companies that make presses for OSB. and most engineered woods, Siepelkamp and Diefenbacher. They've gone Siepelkamp. They might have paused that decision-making in today's current environment. He's not coming to beat me up. All right, the hardwood market was already challenged, but China recently, wholly unrelated to trade issues in their terms, suddenly developed a phytosanitary concerns around hardwood logs and is no longer accepting those. You're like, Eric, Maine doesn't export a whole lot of hardwood logs to China. That is true. Many other places do. Suddenly all those logs are generally stuck in the U.S. They're going a few other places, but they're generally stuck here, and that's not helping hardwood markets. And of course, who knows about retaliatory tariffs? I did see this quote. This is from a presentation by the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. This was specifically around, one of the stated goals of tariffs, which is increasing domestic manufacturing. If we want to reduce reliance on imported lumber and increase domestic productions, there's two things we need: additional harvesting and increased processing capacity. It's true in Vermont. It's likely true here, certainly on the harvesting capacity. This is very true. Some of you might have seen at the national level, the president seeks to increase timber harvests on national forests by 25%. I'll share a quick story. I am the owner of the only sawmill in northern New Mexico. I purchased it in 1991 by mistake. I'm not kidding. It came with a package of things that I didn't fully read through. It last operated in 1984. It is still listed by the Carson National Forest as their market for ponderosa pine. Okay. I was a junior in high school when it last operated. So, there's no loggers. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple loggers, good guys with chainsaws. There's no meaningful harvesting capacity. There's certainly no sawmill capacity. And my mills, if anyone wants it here, it's for sale for $1. And I will give you the $1, and you can give it back to me. It comes with a whole lot of things you don't want. Okay, Maine timber harvest by product. We've been on a slow decline. It's more or less leveled off the last couple of years that we're not seeing. The last year, here's 2020. We don't fully have all that next year's data, but anecdotally, we've either leveled off. We're not bleeding like we were. And that top line is the same as this top line. So that top line is timber harvesting, and then all of these are different job categories in forestry and logging, mills, sawmills, pulp and paper. And not surprisingly, as timber harvesting volume declines, jobs decline. So to the extent we want more jobs, and I think we do in rural Maine and more markets, it's going to give us more jobs. All right. Saw logs, real quickly, the key indicator for those is housing starts. I will repeat myself, there are no good short-term indicators. You needn't wait to the part where I get to the good short-term indicators. They don't exist. So you see the COVID drop there in 2020. That gray area is a recession, so one of the shortest recessions we've had. And we were on a nice uptick. 2022, of course, inflation kicks in. With inflation came increased interest rates, and our general trend is down with some seriously sharp recent downward trends. We have enormous pent-up housing demand in this country. We have a great need for housing in rural, suburban, and urban areas around this country. And if we had housing policy and interest rates and probably a few other things, and I'm not smart enough to identify, we could completely unleash this market and have robust, robust housing starts, and therefore near-term increase of softwood, long-term increase of hardwood. Housing starts are a great leading indicator for hardwood. We don't have that, and I don't see it in the near term. Here's the last year of lumber prices. Things are going up and up and up until, okay, I have no idea what happened there. Things are going up and up and up until very recently. I won't ascribe any reason to that. Everyone can reach their own conclusions, but this is just simply the way things are. I've also, because we all remember the lumber spikes, want to put this in perspective. This is the last 5 years, which makes, which makes this volatility look like nothing. On hardwood side, more diverse markets. Nationally, we do a whole bunch of things. None of them are popping, unfortunately. So we have, and when nothing's popping, we tend to have increased reliance on exports. I mentioned our growing friendship with our friends in China. We're extending that to our friends in Canada and Mexico as well. Does seem we're going to reach some sort of deal with Japan, which probably looks like the deal we had 2 months ago. So, a lot of excitement and dynamic times. There's nothing in the near-term horizon that makes me think that hardwood lumber's about to pop. And we'll see softwood lumber pop first. All right, pulp and paper. You all remember a couple years ago we had crazy pricing. That's gone, and I'll show you why it's not come back anytime soon. The thing that I noticed there, the thing that I watched carefully, generally you like to think as prices rise, you get more supply. That didn't occur a couple years ago. It was just bizarre to watch, which meant there was no elasticity in logging capacity. That can change if there are stable permanent markets, but there's no surge capacity, which is a concern. We've seen some permanent market shifts. You just heard Brian present about SAPI's very significant $400 million plus investment. Rumford has made investment over the last couple of years. So this is all great news. I have some very serious concerns about the impact of tariffs. One, how does that impact a mill purchasing pulp or bringing it in from Canada that's necessary to their operation? Two, if we tariff folks, it's sort of naive to expect that there aren't retaliatory tariffs, so we could have an absolute mess. And finally, I just note that just selling market pulp is pretty brutal business. Without the value add, it's hard to see that as a long-term play. Particularly, we're seeing some very large mills coming online in the next several years in Brazil that make what amount to hardwood pulp. So, how's all this going to work out? I don't know, but if a mill doesn't have value added, it's on my watch list. Here's kraft pulp sale price. The thing I want to show you here is, you'll remember in winter of 2023, I'm about to show you a picture, prices for pulp were crazy, and everyone's like, how come we can't have that anymore? Well, because the price for pulp just doesn't support it, and therefore the price for paper doesn't support it. That was short-term spike, sort of coming out of COVID, but we've now sort of returned to normal stages. So kraft prices decreased 29%, yesterday's price versus January 2nd, 2023. This is a picture in Eastport. There's a similar Rube Goldberg unloading situation going on in Searsport at this point. But in 2023, this state, You know, there's a English expression, taking coal to Newcastle. Newcastle's where all the coal is mined. You'd never do it. We were taking chips to Maine. That tells you that the capacity here simply did not exist, because I've run through the numbers. I've checked with, you know, they won't share their numbers with me, but the folks that bought this wood, I've told them my numbers, and they have made clear to me that I am not precisely accurate, but incredibly right. So, and these were expensive chips. All right, biomass, don't invest. Here's electricity pricing by month, all real-time hours. The blue actually happened, the orange is gonna happen, but that's not a prediction. That's people buying and selling power in the future, which is a thing you can do. So if we take those prices, those orange prices going forward, what's that look like? Well, if we assume over the next year, the electricity average price is $68.45. That is the average of that orange futures price I just showed you. And we take RECs, renewable energy certificates, which when you make renewable energy, you get to sell the renewable separately. Recent broker quotes, $30. Okay. So we take $68.45 and add 30, that's $98.45. Okay, that's the left column. That's your revenue. The right column is your expenses. So if we say biomass fuel's $40, obviously, I don't know, if an antitrust statement wasn't read here, one should have been. I'm not saying that's the price, I'm making up a price, purely hypothetical. But if we accept $40 as the price, and we accept that it takes 1.6 green tons to make a megawatt hour, you can take that as true. We multiply those, that's $64 per megawatt hour of wood costs. That's just your fuel. Then, turns out the employees that work there like to get paid. I know. You have to, you know, there's just operational expenses. O&M ends up being somewhere around $35 per megawatt hour. So if we had 64 and 35, we were at $99, which is a lot. So that's your expenses, and that's a lot like the 98.45 we were just looking at. So that's roughly a break-even business. So we're going to see massive cost control that for anyone that tries to operate, downward pressure on pricing, probably some seasonal curtailments when electricity prices get low, and no meaningful investments in the plants. But other than that, all good. So across the Northeast, we've got a number of facilities idled. We've got they're not going to operate spring and fall. I'm sorry, that's a typo. They're going to be idle spring and fall. They're going to operate summer, winter. If you're at all exposed to the New Hampshire markets, just incredible likely volatility there. Maine, in the last couple of years, did award a long-term contract to Reenergy, which I think is now Regenerate at their Livermore Falls facility. Got a couple, when I say newer, I think we're now talking the better part of a decade old, but 10 megawatt facilities at Robbins Lumber and Maine Wood Pellets. And the legislature is taking active steps to support modern wood heat, which is going to, you know, we've got some campuses in this state already heating with wood. We may have more. Those create nice small markets. 10, well, you know, high schools like 500 tons. We've got Colby College, which uses somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 tons when they're fully utilizing their biomass facility. These are nice small markets. They're great local markets. They don't change the weather. All right, so that's all the good news. But I seriously believe that we are at a positive inflection point long-term for the forest products industry. I do want to state lumber and pulp and paper are going to be our core products for a long time. But building on the infrastructure, particularly the supply infrastructure that they've helped support, we're going to see a whole lot of new products. And why? Some of it is really addressing climate change and very directly replacing things made from oil or oil derivatives. I understand that the current U.S. policy might not be in that direction, but that's not going to change the overall global trend. It's not. Current politics might leave us behind or give us a negative long-term position, but it's not going to change the overall trend. There is a strong effort, and it's been growing in the last 4 or 5 years. Certainly this administration has made clear they want to keep and build manufacturing in the U.S. And then there's a recognition that sort of all parties, I think, have failed rural America and a desire for a prosperous rural America. So with that, I'd say we're going to see a whole lot of, I don't know what I'm doing. We're going to see a whole lot of new products. We're going to see a bunch of innovation. Importantly, we're going to see some failures. We're going to see some high-profile failures. And people are going to be testing stuff, trying stuff. Much of it is going to work. Some of it won't. If you knew ahead of time it's not going to work, you probably wouldn't do it. But some things just don't work out. And generally, these users are going to be smaller scale than we're used to. We're not going to see paper mill-sized consumers. So some of the emerging products we're looking at, cross-laminated timber, biochar, insulation, biofuels, bioprinted products. I'll hit each of these quickly. These are just the tip of the iceberg. Those of you going to the Advanced Composites Center today will see, and that's one of the leading R&D facilities in the country. There's a few others also at universities. You're going to see some cool stuff that looks like a little bit of science fiction, and it is a little bit of science fiction. And the question always is, how do we get this to market? That can be a decade-long plus slog, but you're going to see some cool stuff, and hopefully a lot of that stuff makes it to market and gets sort of beyond the dream stage. All right, cross-laminated timber, which is basically these enormous panels. I mean, they're like the size of, we're in 2 rooms, they're the size of one of these rooms. And they can be assembled, I say like Legos. I'm sure if there were architects and builders here using them, they would go into a great description of how it's not like Legos. It's just like Legos. This is the Center for Arctic Studies at Bowdoin. You see the artist conception on the left, it under construction. And then, aside from the little grassy spot, the actual building looks shocking like the artist conception. So I like that. That's the first time I've ever seen that. And that's a cool building, right? That's a very cool building. If you're ever down near Brunswick, go give yourself a tour. There's a museum in there, so they let you in and wander around. All of Admiral Perry's stuff from going to the Arctic is there, so that in itself is cool. But the building's cool. But the building I find much more exciting is this one. It's pretty boring. Cross-laminated timber. It's at Pease International Trade Port, formerly Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's a nondescript office building. There's like a need for hundreds of these. There's a need for one and only one of these. So as much as I like the Arctic Center, and they won't let you give yourself a tour. How do I know that? The security guy and I talked about it at length. So, I mean, you could try, you might have better luck. But very cool cross-laminated timber building it's an office building. It's a nice office building, but it's an office building. There's a facility now, I think they're operating, but they're certainly under, late stage development at best, that is a support, both literally and figuratively, for mass timber and cross-laminated timber. That's these folks at Whole Trees. They have a facility now in Ashland, Maine. They use whole trees. It is like the most appropriately named company. And they use these trees to replace steel beams. So they provide columns. And it's pretty cool when you go see them because they show you their inventory. And what they've done is gone out on some landowners there that they've partnered with and taken pictures of a whole bunch of trees. And they have assessed their structural capabilities. And when they get an order, they send like one person out with a chainsaw, and it's very expensive because, you know, you're mobilizing a unit to go get one tree, and they get that tree, and they load it up, and they bring it in, and then it goes into a cafeteria to support a ceiling. So it's pretty cool. All right, standard biocarbon. If any of you deliver to the mill in Enfield, this is a separate operation out back. They're producing biochar, which is like the fanciest, most technically dialed-in form of charcoal. It's used in agricultural operations. It's used in environmental remediation. It absorbs and binds PFAS, and it's used in carbon sequestration. They began operating last year. A nice small market. I was involved in this one, but you know, not a big market. None of these. This is not going to be a big market. They use somewhere in between 15 and 20,000 tons a year at capacity, and I mean they're using sawmill residues. All right, we all know about Timber HP. That's the former Madison. I guess it's still the Madison Mill. It's the former Madison Paper Mill. It's now the Madison Timber HP Mill. They make this stuff. Importantly, this stuff being insulation that just competes against fiberglass insulation. They use softwood chips to make it. Very cool. Both Standard Biocarbon and Timber HP have both had events recently where something that looks like bankruptcy. I think Timber HP's was bankruptcy. But a full sort of restructuring of the cap table. That's not great, particularly if you're on the cap table. It's because whatever value you had suddenly looks very round. But we're probably going to see that with some of these new facilities. The key thing is both these facilities continue to operate. You know, they're going to be markets. The ownership changed. Kind of sucks that the developers and the entrepreneurs that brought these to life are probably not core to the ongoing operations. But in terms of, is this good long-term market, there's every reason to think the answer is yes. All right, Castle Rock Biofuels, using the Ensign technology under development in Millinocket. On the left is an aerial view of the mill. This is the mill site. But legally, this is the mill site. But the mill that many of you are familiar with is right here. Castle Rock's building on the legal mill site, not on the brownfield mill site. There's a whole lot of reasons for that. I'm happy to discuss with a beer in hand that you bought. So they're going to use a pyrolysis process to produce a bio-oil. It's used in heating applications. They've got 20 plus years of production at a facility in Ontario, in a place called Côte-Nord, Quebec, that none of you have ever been to probably, because you get to like the far north of Quebec and then you head north. I have flown in there, which is how you get there. They have a new facility, but that is serving that market. It is in Quebec. It is not in our part of Quebec. So they've got a facility there. It's a proven technology. Here, they're going to be using slash, and I'll get into this a little bit, but this means tops and branches. All right, I've got 1 minute. We're going to go fast. And they're restricted by the Renewable Fuel Standard. Biofine, another biofuel manufacturer, going to be at the Lincoln Mill. I I think, a little behind in development, but very proven technology at the pilot scale. They've been operating at the University of Maine for a while. They're producing levulinic acid, which you've never heard of. I hadn't either, but apparently, because I called some folks, I went to school with a whole bunch of DuPonts that actually work at DuPont. They're like, oh yeah, levulinic acid, that's like flour is to baking. So it's used in everything. They're going to be using it in drop-in home heating oil. Renewable fuel standard is this federal standard that tells you what feedstock you can use. You're allowed to use wood from plantations, true pre-commercial thinnings, which we don't really have either of those at scale, or tops and branches. So these facilities are using tops and branches. Okay, both these are producing home heating oil. Why? Because we use home heating oil. I'm going to go quickly. Bioprinting, you're going to see some of this today. Those of you taking the tour, very cool, not ready for market yet, but they printed a boat, put the entire congressional delegation and the governor on with no life vests. They also printed a house. That's cool. Not a new product, but someone is a successful OSB project developer. They developed a project you might be familiar with in Limerick some decades ago. They are, John Godfrey is developing a project at a site we're all familiar with in Jay. It's sort of recently become public that he's waiting to order equipment until he figures out what's going on with tariffs. Maine's thrown a bunch of money into some of these emerging industries, which is great. I worry about a lot of things, including demographics. That bulge you see in 2000 that then moves up 20 years is great. That's a lot of people in this room, so that's not surprising. But the second bulge you see, the bottom bulge in age cohort that you see 20 years ago, isn't here. That's people that moved to California and Boston and somewhere else. They're not in our workforce. I worry about that. We have reasons to be concerned. I'm happy to send this to you. All that said, we're used to boom and bust cycles. We've got markets. We've got the forest. We've got the supply infrastructure. And we live in close proximity to the greatest collection of consumers in the history of the world. And I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to skip this. This is the forest. Okay. These are markets. This is not a population map. These are people that can afford to leave the lights on at night. That's up. That's us in the upper right-hand corner of the United States. We sit atop this enormous market. And if we can't figure out how to make that a competitive advantage, we should not win. Because that's a huge competitive advantage. So we can complain all we want that those people over here have some advantages, and they probably do. Not at the moment. Right now, they're like down 145%. But, you know, that won't last forever. But we're right here, sitting atop that. We ought to be able to make that work. If you want to get this, if you want to get on my emails, if you like stuff like this, let me know. I'll stick you on my email list. Am I allowed to take one question? All right, I'm like between you and coffee, because despite me very clearly saying it into a microphone, Richard did not open the bar. Questions? All right, nobody with the stripper index? All right. Thank you.